New company really is kind of about, this whole issue of arrival and colonialism and immigration and migration and all of these sort of elements, that I think we're dealing with, today. And one of the things that I've found is that my works are political, but also I don't think of myself as a political activist. I try to communicate things that concern me, and these issues are things that do concern me. That whole notion of who is an immigrant, from a Native perspective, everybody's came to this place, and, from a human element, you realize that the reason why people immigrate is they simply want to make a better life for their family. And that's just, as I said, kind of a reality, and part of that, in a tongue-in-cheek way, I sort of utilize these, put these flying saucers in with these historical figures from U.S. currency, and again, they're floating around to, trying to find a place to land. One of the things you might notice too about the new company print is, while I've talked about visual space, and even my prints, when you look at them, they're clearly informed by my art school training. I mean, no doubt about it. They have a kind of a Western sense of space in terms of creating that illusion of space. And they're very, and I have to admit, I'm very influenced by Renaissance and Mannerist painting. But also what you start to see is some of these flat shapes. And years ago, when I was teaching at the Institute of American Indian Arts, I began to sort of question why I was sort of teaching these Western fundamentals, in my drawing classes. And I started thinking about this notion of different types of space, juxtaposing this illusionistic space to this sort of flat space, that one sort of belongs in this Western tradition, of creating art, and the other one, is maybe a little bit more connected to a non-Western tradition, in a sense. These are a couple of other maps that I would like to kind of point out to you too as well. And one of the things I'm sort of interested in, too, with maps today is how they sort of are developed by cartographers, and they sort of kind of illustrate, the concerns and needs of people, at that particular time. This old map from the 1920s of Osage County, what we see is a series of rivers and streams, creeks, and also the railroad. And then too, if you look a little bit closer, you see Pasuli and Wahakali and Shanzoli, which are the three villages, basically Gray Horse, Pahuska, and Hominy villages. And the map itself is quite sparse. And then when you look at the map next to it, from the 1990s, what we see is this overlay of towns, of roads, of reservoirs. And again, you see this kind of transition sort of being illustrated in the landscape. As I said, we look at maps as a means of guiding us from one place to another, but also these maps are documents of colonialism, for Native peoples. And when you think about this, and I've heard this said in the past, that maps are really kind of, were one of the more important or more destructive ways of kind of removing people, Native peoples, from their land.